Hey everybody, welcome to GTC Newsroom. I am Chris Ball, also known as Presidio Dog, and a bunch of new drivers have joined GT Champions for the Porsche Cup. And there have been a lot of questions about the preseason qualifier, how it's all going to work. So I thought I'm going to go over a little bit of this just to help answer some of the questions, okay? First of all, the qualifier format. If you look here at the drawing here, in fact, let me make it bigger for you so that you can see it better. In this qualifier format, you're going to see the three heats on the left-hand side. These are on January 7th. It's a Saturday, and the first heat is at 6 p.m. New York time in the United States. 1 hour later will be heat number 2. 1 hour later will be heat number 3. All drivers who have registered for the event and got in as a registered driver in the first 45 drivers, they have a guaranteed spot in one of these three heats, and those names have already been put out in Discord, and we posted some of the images on social media. So those drivers know who they are. Now, a couple of drivers have left. So what I need to explain is how this qualifier is going to work and then how the reserves will fit in between. Okay? So looking at the left, on Saturday, all drivers that are registered are going to be in one of those three heats, and they will participate, and then they will move on to the next race, which is on Sunday. So as you can see, the top 5 in each heat will move on to the finals, heat 1. That's there on January 8th on Sunday. And then the top 8 out of that race on Sunday will go into Division 1. The bottom 8 will go to the finals heat number 2. From Saturday, the original heats, everybody outside of the top 5 are going to go to the semifinals. So everyone's going to get a chance to race again. And the top 4 from each of those two semis will move up to that finals heat to race against the bottom 8 of the finals heat 1. So that's the blue square, finals heat 2. You can see where they go. Everybody else from the semis will end up in Division 2. Okay? Well, everybody from position 5 through 7, right? So the 3 of them. Then there's going to be one more spot in Division 2, and that is going to be a wild card draw between the 2 8th place drivers from the semifinals. So what we'll do is we'll look at, since they both tied that race, we'll look at their performance in the race before. So the Saturday race, heat 1, the pre-qualifiers are all the way to the left of the screen. If the position 8 drivers both finished in the same place in their first heats, then we'll do a coin toss. But if one of the drivers finished higher than the other driver, then they will get the spot, and the other driver goes into Division 3, and all of the rest of the drivers go into Division 3. So that's how they're going to get into the 3 divisions. Now, let's talk about the reserves. So we have drivers that have registered. You can go to the website, to the registration link, and you can see who's been registered. There's links in the Discord for it. The reserves are in order of how they registered past the first 45. Each time a person drops out, we've had 2 people that have suddenly gotten conflicts against the series, so they had to drop out because they weren't going to be able to make the preseason qualifiers. Or they just couldn't make the series altogether. So if they can't make the series altogether, they were pulled out, and the first reserve was put into their spot. So that's happened twice now. So 2 of the reserves have moved up into the full-time slots for the first 3 heats on Saturday. The remaining reserves are sitting there waiting. Now, they will be able to go into the Discord and click on the RSVP for the reserve slots for all 3 heats. If on the heat day, on Saturday, if we get drivers that don't show up for their heats that they're assigned to race in, the reserve drivers that are set up in there, they will be able to take their spot and get the full-time seat. The driver that missed will go into a reserve spot. Okay? So that's how we're working the reserves. So that is the way we're going to fit them in, right? once the Saturday heats are over, if we lose anybody in the second day of qualifiers, I'm not filling them in with a reserve because the reserves needed to compete in the first one. I might put them as a reserve in the semifinals, but not in finals heat 1, because finals heat 1 is like the fastest guys or girls from the first 3 heats are going to be up in there, and I'm not going to take a reserve driver that is either unknown or may not be at that skill level and throw them in there with those guys. I mean, that's just not fair to either side, right? So that's what we're going to do with the reserves. So the rule book, I've laid all of this out in the rule book. What I didn't lay out, and which was brought to my attention not long ago, was that what happens if a reserve driver can't make the qualifiers. Okay, so let's say we have I can't move my finger there, but way over there. The thing's cut my finger off. On the far left side of the screen there. If a reserve driver can't make one of those 3 heats, they're not going to compete in any of the rest of the qualifier format. But they could still be a reserve, right? So what's going to happen is, in the divisions 1, 2, and 3, if anybody drops out in one of these 3 right here, right? If let's say somebody in Division 1 drops out, so the top driver with the highest points, or whoever finished highest moving into that, they will move up and they will take that spot. The person in Division 3 will move up and take this spot. And a reserve will move up and fill in Division 3. Now, somebody's asked, well, what about you get one of these aliens that registered late? A perfect example is Bipolar Express, who didn't get registered in time, is currently the number 1 reserve right now. He's at the top of the list based on when people register. Probably somebody's not going to show up in the heats, the first 3 heats. But if they all showed up and he didn't get to participate in those formats and he was the first reserve, he would then wait and see if a spot opens up in Division 1, 2, or 3. If a spot opens up in Division 3 and he comes in and he wins that race, he gets a bunch of points, right? If a spot opens up in Division 2, he'll be the highest level 3 driver to move up to level 2. So the highest points getter in this division will move up to fill in Division 2. And likewise, Division 2 drivers, whoever's top in points there, will move up and take the spot there. Now, that would be for full-time spots. I've laid it out in the rule book, but everybody's going to earn the points. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here, and I'm going to read to you right out of the rule book on how the points are going to work for the reserve drivers. So, the drivers that advance to a full-time spot in a division above them will bring 50% of their points. Let me move this over here so I don't look like I'm looking too far away. They will bring 50% of their points, rounded up to the nearest point, with them when they move from a lower division to a higher division. Okay? And if they competed as a reserve in the higher division, they will keep 100% of those points. So let's say somebody in Division 2 moves up and reserves for Division 1, and they score, 15 points, or 12 points, whatever the points is that they get in that round. They will get all of those points that they earned in that round applied to their points in Division 2, because they raced faster drivers, right? Presumably. Okay? If they move up and get a full-time spot, they'll keep the points they earned when racing in Division 1, but they'll only bring 50% of the points they earned when racing in Division 2. Okay? It's going to be a little bit complicated, and we'll get it sorted out. But the idea is we want drivers to be able to move up and keep Division 1 and 2 full, because they're going to be broadcasted. So we want to have 15 drivers in there all competing. So this is the way we're going to try to keep all drivers with an opportunity to compete in full lobbies. So that's going to be awesome. Okay. Now, if a driver just does a few rounds but never gets a full-time spot, like I said, they're going to keep 100% of the points they earned in the higher division toward their lower division score. Okay? Now, drivers might not ever earn a full-time spot in a division above them. So, let's say one person doesn't show up in Division 1 for a race. The top Division 2 driver, they're going to move up, and they're going to take their spot for the race, and they're going to race everybody there, and they're going to earn their points. Then they go back down to Division 2, right? If the next round comes and another driver is missing, or a different driver in Division 1 is missing, then they can go up, and they're going to take that spot. They're going to race with all those people, then they'll come back, and they're going to get all those points. They might do that 3 or 4 or 5 times if they're the one that keeps going up and keeps running in that lobby. And when they do that, everybody moves up. So the top Division 3 will move up into the bottom of Division 2. So everyone moves up, and Division 3 moves up, and a reserve will come in from the bottom and fill in Division 3. Okay? So everyone's going to move up and down as a whole as a driver moves up to reserve a spot. Now, if a driver from Division 1 drops out or doesn't show up for a second race, they're gone, right? So there's an attendance thing, and it's in the rule book. If a driver misses more than one race in any division, they are out of the series completely. They're done. They don't get to race anymore, and the drivers below will move up and take that person's spot. Okay. So if a Division 1 driver doesn't show up for round 2 or round 1, and then they don't show up for round 2, they're gone. They're not competing anymore. That driver that was in Division 2 moves up to Division 1 and gets the full-time seat, and they're going to continue to run. So, what if the Division 1 driver misses round 1, and then they miss round 4? The Division 2 driver moves up, takes their spot as a reserve for round 4, and they'll get to keep that spot because that person is now out. So they'll bring 50% of the points that they earned in Division 2, if they did, and 100% of the points they've earned in Division 1, and that's their point structure, and they'll finish off Division 1. Everybody from Division 3 moves all the way up into, somebody moves from 3 to 2, and somebody moves from reserve to 3. So it's going to be a little fluid. It's something that we're trying because one of the challenges that we have is on the top tier drivers, some of them can be a little, if they know they're not going to win a series or they just don't like the way that it's going, they just leave. And the rest of the drivers who just love to compete and race and have a good time and the camaraderie of it all, we want to reward them by letting them move up and take these positions. So this is something that we're trying out to see how this all works. So I hope that makes sense for everybody. Now I'm going to go one more piece about reserves. There's 2 types of reserve drivers. Drivers that registered late, okay? So they're on a list. The drivers that registered late are on a list, okay? And they all can compete in the heats, right? So if we're talking about those heats way over there on the left side of the screen. A reserve driver must compete through the qualifier. Let me back up. A reserve driver is waiting to compete in those first set of heats. So they're in there as a reserve. If a spot opens up, they get it. They get the full-time spot, and they're good all the way through this whole format, and they have a full-time seat. There's some drivers that have already told me, there's 2 of them that have already told me that they've already told me that they can't make the qualifier, but they still want to reserve. They will be at the bottom of the reserve list. Reserves that get a chance to run the qualifier, they get first dibs. Okay, if a spot doesn't open through the qualifiers, then those drivers that said that they could make the qualifiers but a spot wasn't available, they will be the first ones that get a spot into the series. The drivers that couldn't make it because they couldn't make the qualifier day, they will be below them on the list. That's pretty much it, guys. So if you have any questions, just go to the website. Of course, you can always talk to us, but I've been getting DMs for like the last 24 hours or so asking all of these questions. So hopefully that answers the questions for everybody on how reserve drivers are going to work and how the heats are going to work. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. It's unique and it's a new way of qualifying for us, and I got to give props where props are due. All of this stuff here, me and Rusty Maggot sat down, and I had this vision of doing it like this. I was missing a piece, and my brain was not letting me figure out what that piece was, and he found it, and we tweaked it, and this is what we ended up with. So, if you have any questions, still feel free to ask, but hopefully this answered all of them. So I guess that's it. I don't have anything else to talk about with you guys, so we'll see you later.